Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today I'm continuing with making accessories for my witch's workroom. Now I've pulled out here a number of the things that I've made myself for that room, and with the exception of a couple, they have appeared in previous videos. This is just to show you, the kind of wide range of things that I'm going to be including in that room. Now the things you might not have seen before are this little light box, which actually turns on and off. That's from Grandmama's Past as a Fortune Teller. And then there is a cracked mirror that will be hanging above the fireplace at some point in the future. Now I've decided that for this video I'm going to focus on dressing the work table, or rather on items that can be used to dress this table. Now when I did the video on the table I made a little dish, but obviously that's not going to go very far, so let's get on with it. I would like to apologise again for the fact that my voice is still a bit on the croaky side. I'm going to do my best to avoid too many unnecessary edits, but we'll see how I get on. I've always had an idea in my head that I wanted the work table to look like Grandmama had just left, that she'd been called away from whatever she was doing and had just left everything as it was. And that's the look that I'm going to go for. When I decorated the table, or rather distressed the table, decorated seems a very inapt word, I made a little dish. This is made from blister packaging that you get medication in, and it's something that I like to do. They make really nice metal dishes, trays, that kind of thing. And so I've made a few more. Now I'm not sure if these which I've stacked up are going to actually go on the table or they're going to go elsewhere in the room, but while I was working I made those. Now I've got a different one. This is not from medication. This is actually from some plastic packaging, and that's made like a little glass bowl, which I quite like the look of. So I think I'm going to leave that one clear. And then I have made my little version of a kind of chafing dish. Now a chafing dish, you normally put some charcoal or sort of a hot coal underneath and warm something up over the top. And what I've done is I've used two different bits of packaging, two different sizes, and they've both been painted with my metallic effect, which means black and then silver. And then I've stuck them together and I've added 3 little seed beads to give this some feet. Now I've also painted on some little black marks on the side, so it looks like there are holes in there, because obviously you'd want airflow in if this was to really work. And in the top I've got a small amount of tea leaves. Well, actually this isn't tea leaves, this is the dust that comes out of the bottom of a box of tea when you open it, and I find it very useful for that kind of earthy looking substance. I do use tea leaves as well, and I will be using those in a little while. In addition to doing some more work with the blister pack pieces, I've also found another use for one of the mini printed newspapers I had last week. Now this one I've simply stuck together as I did them last week, and I've just aged the one side because that's all that's going to be visible. and I've made it look like there's something gruesome falling out of it. Now the cup is actually the lid off one of these eye drops, which I've used in a previous video to make bottles and also to make an hourglass. And if I just remove that there, that little lid trimmed down makes a perfect little cup. You could even put a tiny little handle on it and make a tiny little teacup, but I didn't need that because I wanted to just do it like a metallic bowl. And then I have put some alcohol ink onto the paper. I glued my little cup in place and used a little bit extra of my acrylic glue, which is this Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue, which I do like using for a lot of things. And once that glue was dried, I coloured that with some more of the alcohol ink, and I think that's going to be a interesting little touch. Now, following on from that, I wanted a chopping board, and I'd got these wooden pieces. Now these are just some wooden circles that come in a mixed bag. You can get them from lots of craft shops. And what I've done is I have put some scratches into it using my craft knife, a couple of bigger gouges because it's well used. And then I've coloured it with another alcohol marker. The knife is made from a toothpick, one of those fancy plastic interdental toothpicks, which I made a knife out of for my Vampire Hunters box. All that I've done this time is I've actually wrapped a single strand of embroidery thread around the end to give the handle a different look. And then there's some little scraps of paper on there so it looks like there's something that's being chopped up. Another item from a previous video, actually from the Vampire Hunters box that I've remade, are these little vials, which are simply a clear bugle bead with a tiny little punching of fun foam glued to the top. So they look like a little vial that Grandmama might put her finished potion in. And I made a few of those because I figure that whatever she's making, she's going to have to put it into something. Now, one thing that I am planning on putting on this table that I've not made is this beautiful jar of worms. Now, this is a piece that I bought from a show 2 years ago. And to be fair, I bought a couple of jars from this maker and I could have bought them all. But this one's worms and they are really stunning. Now, obviously, my own jars are going to look a little bit amateurish next to that. So, to go on the table, I've come up with a couple of ideas. Now, this is a slightly bigger jar, which is filled with more scraps of green paper, and I've labelled it seaweed. And yeah, I think that sort of works. I've actually took the cork that came with it and I've cut it down, so I can actually put the cork in and it looks to scale rather than being quite big. If I decide to leave the cork in, I will actually be gluing it in place though. Now, the other jar I've done is I've done some grave dirt. And this one is actually about the same size as the worms jar. And what I've done, and it's not quite dry yet, is I put some glue inside, quite a lot of glue inside, it must be said. And then I've used some more tea leaves, this time from a tea bag that broke in the packet. Couldn't waste anything like that. And those have been fed in, and then it's a bit of grave dirt, and then that jar can just be displayed on its side. So as you can see, my table is filling up, not necessarily with any kind of sense or order, but just with little things that are mostly based on stuff from other videos. One piece that I knew I wanted to make for the table was a pestle and mortar. Now I think the mortar is the bowl and the pestle is the bit that you grind things up with. If I'm wrong, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Now this I've made out of some Das air dry clay, and to be fair, I didn't film it because it's been rather warm and a bit too warm for the clay, and it wasn't very obliging. Now I wanted this to look kind of rough, and so that's the look that I've gone for. The pestle, if I've got this right, was actually made around 2 beads. I used a little pearl bead and then a long bugle bead glued together to give me the basis of the shape, and then that's just been stuck into place on there. And it's all had a coat of a pearlescent paint because I wanted it to sort of look kind of stonish. And then I have dripped a little bit more of my acrylic glue in the bottom, and then that has been coloured again with the alcohol marker. I'm not sure whose blood it is, but obviously it's important for Grandmama's recipe. When I got to thinking about the table, one of the very first things that I thought of that I could put on there was a pot stand, a trivet. Now, there are lots of ways that these are made in real life, and I sort of toyed with a few of them. But I remember, particularly at school in science labs, using some that were made out of very chunky wood. And for this scale, I decided, because they were lying about my desk, I'm not going to lie, that is the reason why, to try using toothpick. And what I've done, I've got them over here, is I've cut 4 pieces of toothpick. Now these are approximately 10 millimetres long, and it is just an ordinary common or garden wooden toothpick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these together quite simply into a bit of a sort of vague square. Now this sort of not worrying too much about things being too exact sort of fits with the kind of attitude that I see my character having in this room. It does, it works. It doesn't matter if it isn't the best looking or the nicest. Now those have grabbed on there, and I'm just going to put a little bit more glue on the end there, and push these together, and then I get a kind of a rectangular stand. And if I get one of my pots, the table's just out of sight, you see that will sit on there quite nicely, and if it was hot that could be put on there and avoid any more burn marks on the table. So maybe I got to thinking that maybe this could have been made by one of her grandchildren, or maybe even one of her great-grandchildren, you know, trying to help Grandmama out. Now I'm going to leave that to dry, and then I am going to give it a little stain with an alcohol marker. I'm loving doing that at the moment, but I need the glue to dry first, so I will be right back. What I'm doing to stain my little pot stand is I'm just using one of my alcohol markers, and I'm just gently colouring it in. Now I'm moulding it with my wonderful tweezers, because they're just that, well, they're a lot smaller than my fingers, and they can get in and they can stay put, whereas I would be dropping this more times than enough. There is no two ways about it. And I am literally just colouring it in. I will go back if need be and touch up any bits where it hasn't taken, but this alcohol ink works over my glue, which is why I use it. So there is my basic little pot stand. Now you could make a fancier pot stand using rows of cocktail sticks, you know, a bigger one. I've got some metal ones like that in my own kitchen, but I think this is going to work quite well in this situation. And as I say, I want it to look like somebody's made it for Grandmama somewhere along the line, and she's actually using her gift. Now, when I got to thinking about Grandmama using pots and them being hot and that kind of thing, I got to thinking that she'd need some kind of a pot holder. And to that end, I've got this piece of cheesecloth muslin. Yes, that's what it is. Now, this is a very fine fabric, and it doesn't exactly work that well at 1/12 scale, but if I fold it, as I want to do, I want something that's sort of folded and stacked and, you know, maybe looks a bit like that. It's going to work quite well. Now I'm going to start off by applying a little bit of glue around the outside. Now you can get proper fray check glue, which if this was going to be a piece that you know, was going to be far more in sight, I would go for something like that. I have actually got some around here somewhere, but I'm just using my ordinary glue, and I'm just going to put a thick line all the way around this piece of fabric and leave that to dry. Now that the glue around this has dried, I'm going to take my scissors and I am going to trim it along the line that I've glued. Now I'm going to repeat that on all four sides, and then I'll have a nice neat piece of fabric. To add a little bit of detail to the cloth, I have gone around the edges with a alcohol marker and my straight edge, just to do a coloured line. Now you don't have to do that, you could just leave it plain, and I know that it's run in a couple of places, but I don't really mind. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to start sticking this into its final shape. So I'm going to begin by sticking it together, folded over once, and then maybe I'll fold it over a bit like that, you know, a bit uneven. Again, just using a little bit of glue. I'm using this glue, which is my acrylic glue, on fabric because I know it works on this fabric. Try it on a little scrap first, you know, try whichever glue you want to use, and see what works, what doesn't show. This dries pretty clear, and even on this sort of fabric doesn't show too much. Now what I want to do now is I do want to put in a bit of a fold a bit more like that, so I'm going to have to add a bit of glue in there, and then in there. Now, I wasn't prepared with this, but I should have been. If I just get a clothes peg, I can put that on there, and then I can leave that to dry and see whether I like it. So I have put another little folding up there and folded a corner over, so it looks a bit more squished up. But you could actually squish this up as much as you wanted, so you know, as I've done that there, sort of given a little bit more. But there I've got a little pot holder to stand on my table. While I was sorting out the small bits to go on the table, I realised that I actually had a piece of furniture that had got missed, and that was this stool, which I bought to go with the table. Well, I debated for a while whether or not to include it, and then decided, oh, why not? But it was actually finished in a nice sort of light wood finish, and it didn't look right. So I stained it using an alcohol marker, and then I've given it a little bit of scuffing up. I've taken some bits off with my craft knife and put a bit of a gouge in the top as if something's been dropped on there that really shouldn't have. And then I've dirtied it up a little bit. Now I may dirty it up a bit more yet before it actually goes into the house finished, but I'm quite liking how this stool has come out. And as you can see, something that was possibly about £1 has come out looking pretty good. I have pulled everything together and arranged it on the table. Now, this is only a rough arrangement because I'm not 100% sure yet exactly how I want it to look. And whilst I like the way that this is going, at the moment it's not quite there. Now I don't know if there's too much and some of these bits will have to go elsewhere in the room, or if there's things that are missing. There's just something that isn't quite right. And so I'm going to give myself some time to go away and to think about it and see where I go with it. Certainly if I leave some of these things on, there's extra little bits that I need to do, but for the moment I'm really pleased with the work table accessories that I have come up with. Now I'm having to be very careful here because nothing is even tacky waxed into place, as you can see by that jar that keeps moving. However, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe, and until next time, bye.